Welcome to today's lesson, HTML Canvas graphics. We are going to be talking about what the HTML Canvas element is, how we can use it to create or draw graphics on our HTML page. So let's go straight away and see what this is. So HTML Canvas element is used to draw graphics on a web page using JavaScript. So mainly the canvas element that we are going to be seeing is only a container to hold the graphics that you're going to draw using JavaScript. So, and there are various methods that the canvas element uses to draw these graphics, such as uh, boxes, circles, images. You can use it for some fancy animation and all of that. We are going to be looking at some JavaScript, but this is not by no means a JavaScript class, so I don't expect you to understand everything, but I'm going to try my best to explain what the various code lines do or mean. So let's just dive right into the code. So if you are using the browsers need to support this feature, right? So if you are using Chrome, you need 4.0 version 4.0 and above, right? Mozilla, you need 2.0 and above, right? Safari 3.1 and above, and Opera you need 9.0 and above. So I'm sure all of us are using the current modern versions of browsers, so this should not be an issue. So let's take an example. So let me first put a comment in here, canvas, right? And then I'm gonna just show you the formatting. The markup looks like this. We have the canvas element, right? And then every canvas should have an ID because the ID is what the JavaScript is gonna refer to, right? So we're gonna put an ID saying that first canvas, okay? And then we are gonna have the width of the canvas, and then we're gonna use 200 by 200. So we're gonna use a width of 200 and a height of say 200, right? So by default, every canvas has no border, so we don't have any border in here, right? And uh, it's rectangular. It's a rectangular area. So if I save this and I refresh this, you can see that the nothing actually shows up here because remember it has no border and we have not put in anything, so that's why we are not seeing anything. By default there is no border, so let's try and create one that has a border so at least we can see. So I'm going to put a style attribute so that we can use the border, and then I can say I want a border of 1 pixel solid and say black. Okay, so now we have a border. So if I refresh this, you can now see it's now visible. It wasn't that it was not there in the first place, but we just added a border so we can see. So all I did was I just put this in. I just put in an HTML block of code just to make things formal and clean. So we have this canvas. So let's look at what the JavaScript is going to look like. And this first example that we are going to be looking at will be to just draw a line from one corner of this to the next, right? So let's try and do that. So I'm going to explain the JavaScript that I am going to be coding, and hopefully you can follow along. So first we need to have our script tag because we're going to be writing JavaScript in here. The first thing that we want to want to do is to get to be able to pass the ID of the canvas into the script, right? So I'm going to create a variable that I'm going to call C, and I'm going to say that variable is going to be my context. I'm going to do document dot get elements by ID, and then the name of the context element that I'm going to be going for is going to be first canvas. Canvas. Okay. So I got the canvas element in this variable called C. The next thing I need to do is to get a context, right? And what the context actually is it's the get. We're gonna use a method called get context, and it returns a drawing context, right? How you want to look at it is uh a drawing whatever tool, right? If you want to call it. So the context is what you're going to use to actually make the animation, make the drawing. So it holds that context for the entirety for the canvas. So whatever drawing, whatever animation you want to use, you have to use that context to make that animation, right? So maybe this will become a little clearer a little bit. So let's just do this. So let's define the context as variable ctx context, and then we're going to say is c. I want the context for this element, this variable c dot, and I say we're going to use the get context method. So we're going to say get context, right? And we're going to pass into this context to d. So this is the context that we invoked, right? So anytime you make a call to this CTX context, it's gonna return the same drawing context, right? And so if you define another context within the same canvas, it's always gonna be returned as a null value because you can only have normally one context, right? So that is the context we are gonna do, and the 2D is simply the parameters that we pass. We can have multiple. What the 2D does is creation of we call it the canvas rendering context 2D object, right? Representing, and this represents a two-dimensional rendering context, right? And then we also have the WebGL, which we call the experimental WebGL, right? And this, which will create the WebGL rendering context object representing a three-dimensional rendering context, right? So if you are trying to do three-dimensional stuff, you have to use the WebGL. And then we have the WebGL2, right? And then we have the bitmap renderer, right, which is for images, bitmap images. So we have these ones that you can dive into. But for now, we are only going to be using the 2D one, right? So let's try and finish this. So now that we have our context CTX, we can say CTX dot, let's use the method move to, and I'm gonna pass a coordinate. So I'm gonna say 0, 0, right? Which means that I want the context to first start from, it's always gonna start from the top left. So the 0, 0. So this top right here that you can see, like a coordinate system, 0 pixel by 0 pixel. as you can remember, this is a 200 by 200, right? So 0 by 0 is at the top left corner. And then I'm gonna say, okay, you move to this part of the canvas, and then say ctx dot line 2. So line 2 means draw a line 200 by 200, right? And I'm sure most of you already know where this is going. So 200 by 200 will be this bottom portion. So you are here, and we want to draw a line to this, right? So the very next command that we would be writing will be ctx dot stroke, right? This is the method that actually does it. So yes, we have this. Yep. So that's the method that actually draws the line. So if I refresh this, you can see that the line went from the 0, 0 coordinate, if you can put it that way, to the 200 by 200 coordinate. So this was uh, canvas that we just drew a stroke from one edge of the canvas to the other. So we're gonna have the next one we're gonna do is to draw a circle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a break because I want it on the next line, and I'm gonna create another canvas, which is the container, right? And in here I'm gonna put in you know what? Let me just copy all this and make changes. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna call this second canvas, and then if I refresh this, I have my second canvas. But this time around, I want to draw a circle. So again, I have my script, right? Let me just go in here, just put in some space, and then the first thing is to get our elements, right? So I'm gonna call it var, let's say a, and I'm gonna say document dot get element by ID. And what is our ID? Our ID is going to be second canvas. Good. The second thing that we have to do is to get our context, right? So what is our context going to be? Oh, sorry, we have to put it in a variable called CTA. Or maybe I can call it AT, ATX. And I have to find better naming ways for this. I'm gonna call this a dot get context, and again, because it's gonna be 2D, I'm gonna say 2D, right? So we have our context called ATX, right? Now to draw the circle, we're gonna use a method called begin path, and then we use it on our context, which is ATX dot begin path, which is gonna begin a path, right? And we want to draw a circular path. So, and then as this method. And the next thing that we're gonna do is use the ATX dot arc method, and we're gonna draw the arc here. So we're gonna put in here 95, 50, 40, 0, 2 times. And then we're gonna use our math dot pi. Sorry, I forgot this. Okay, and then the last thing we're gonna do is to say our context is ATX dot stroke, and stroke is actually applying the stroke. Okay, so now when I refresh this, you can see the circle right here, right? So what this numbers here mean is what I'm gonna describe. This first one is the x uh, horizontal coordinate, right? And this is the coordinate from the arc's center, right? So we are looking at the 95 is the coordinate from the arc center. So here is going to be x to the center here is at 95 pixels, right? And then this second one is y, which is the coordinate for the vertical coordinate. So from the arc center. So this center to the top is gonna be the vertical coordinate, right? So that's why it's 50. So for example, if I put it here as 95, also let's say 95, then we are looking at it somewhere in the middle. So if I refresh this, you can see that it's centered in the middle because the coordinate from here to the top will be around 95, right? The next one is the radius. So this 40 is the arc's radius and must be positive, right? So we have this always having the radius. So from here to the center here should be a 40 pixel, right? And then the next one, which is this, is the angle at which the arc starts in radians, right? So just so you know, let me just put in 40 and let's see what that's gonna look like. So you can see, right? So I always put 0 because I want to draw a whole circle, right? So you have that, and then the earn angle is uh 2 pi r. So in maths you see have this 2 pi and then we have the radius. So this is the end angle and it's always positive. So all these are all positives, right? And then it's by default uh counterclockwise, right? So yeah, so this is the circle that we just drew. You can look more into what this means if you are interested. The next thing we want to look at is another canvas for text. So let's just do this. And maybe I'm just going to copy the entire thing this time around. Paste it right here. Refresh it so we can see that we have another context down here. And I'm going to call this third canvas, right? And then what we are going to do is I have my 10 canvas, I have my height and all that. And then I have my script. So I'm just gonna do it right beneath this one. So like we always do, we have our var equal, and this time I'm gonna go b because I am random like that. Var b, sorry. It's equal to document, not documents, but documents dot get element by ID, and the element that we want to get is what? Third canvas. Okay, and then now that we have our variable, our element in var b, we can now get our context. So and this time let's say we already use ctx, atx, btx. That's equal to, and this time is b dot get context for our We are trying to get a context for our canvas B. So the get context, and then 2D. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna define the fonts. CTX dot fonts. I'm gonna say what kind of font do we want. I'm gonna put in here 32 pixels, and I'm gonna put Arial. Okay. And the next thing is CTX. Sorry, it's always gonna be BTX. So BTX, BTX dot filler text. So this is what fills in the text, right? And the method has uh, new context. Let me just say text context, something like this. And then I'm gonna put 10, and I'm gonna put 50, right? And then if I refresh this, what do I see? We see the text context, right? So that is what it is. You can see how we can add text to the context. We can draw text, if I should put it that way. Uh, we could also try and add a type of text that we might call stroke text. So maybe instead of using filler text, I can use, and I'm gonna comment this out and use btx dot stroke text. Right. So there are various methods that we can use to achieve the desired effect of what we want. And so when I refresh this, you can see that it changed to a stroke text, right? So those are the various things we can do with this. So there are other things you can do. Uh, we're talking about drawing a linear gradient, right? If you want to add some color, right? You can have a circular gradient. You can do so much. You can draw an image or whatever you want to do. If you're interested in this, you can look more into it. This is okay for now. It's giving us the basis for how context, HTML, uh, canvases look like. You need to know some JavaScript to be able to do this. We have a JavaScript section that would give you a basic to uh, pro, uh, pro understanding of JavaScript. So you can look at that. I would suggest you follow the tutorials as they come. That will give you everything you need to be an expert. So thanks for watching and see you in the next lesson.